Good morning. It's April 8th, bright sunny day, and a little bit later in the morning than I usually get out, but I'm headed around the lake. I apologize in advance if there's anything strange about the sound. I'm experimenting with my wireless mic again, since the wired one has been working since it warmed up. Oh, shoot, I forgot to turn off the Wi-Fi as I left, so there's going to be a glitch right there. Sorry, as I was saying, if the sound seems different today, I'm experimenting with my wireless mic again, so we'll just see. I know one thing that sometimes happens is there's a clicking sound over here, so because of the mic, so I'm better off letting it dangle. That looks terrible. Perhaps attaching it a little further back on the cord. Sorry about that. Let's try it there. Anyway, yeah, and it's Friday, so I'm going around the lake. Last night I walked, I'm going to adjust that again. Last night I walked from downtown much later in the evening than I normally do. Well, that was different. Try it there. Now that I've done all that, my horizon is quite confused. Not sure as much I can do about that. Maybe it'll straighten itself out as I keep walking. It's +6, so it's nice and warm. I'm wearing my boots, but I'm hoping I won't need them, that it's actually dry all the way around, in which case I can stick to runners after this. Last night I talked about the fact that the Kickstarter succeeded. Well, I already had announced that some time ago, but it finished yesterday at $15,200 out of a $12,000 goal. That's to fund my upcoming anthology of science fiction and fantasy by authors who were guests during the third year of my award-winning podcast, The World Shapers, which you can find at theworldshapers.com, where I talk to other science fiction and fantasy authors about their creative process. That truck's going the wrong way down the street. I don't know why. Must have overshot something. I wanted to come down the alley, maybe? I don't know. Oh, looks like they're putting up traffic signs for some purpose. Or picking them up, I'm not sure which. There's still snow in piles like that where they cleared snow a few weeks ago. But mostly it's gone. Now we'll see what the lake looks like. It was still frozen last week, but it's been a warm week, so let's see if it's turned into water again. And yes, I've definitely got a rather crooked horizon at the moment. I may have exasperated that when I was playing with the microphone there. So if everything seems to have a slant today, that would be why. It's not that the wired mic doesn't work, it works just fine. It's just the cord is a little annoying, and I spent money on these wireless mics, so I'd like to use them. I was a little later this morning because I was doing some publishing stuff. There's always a ton of publishing stuff right now, and going forward as I continue to grow Shadowpaw Press. And on the Shadowpaw Press Reprise side, where I'm publishing new editions of previously published novels and books, I was putting up 2 more today that I've signed contracts for, which is a collection of essays from a writer in Saskatoon, Lloyd Ratzlaff. The Crow Who Tampered with Time, which actually sounds like a science fiction book, but isn't. I love the title, though. And Backwater Mystic Blues, which is also a really good title. And they're both a collection of essays and memoirs and about growing up on the prairie and living on the prairie. He's a former Mennonite pastor, I understand. And the essays have lots of spiritual reflection and other kinds of reflection. So Backwater Mystic Blues was shortlisted for 2 Saskatchewan Book Awards when it was first published. Both of them have good reviews. All right, well, I'll try down here again. Last time I decided I couldn't get through because the other end was flooded. Let's see what it looks like today. It's dry enough until you get to the other end, but last week there was ice down here, so that's gone. Hopefully there's not a huge puddle at the other end, like there was last week. Thin layer of mud on the bottom there. Probably quite muddy here would be my guess. Yeah, it's just mud. I can get through it. And I'll have lots of walking to clean off the mud. Coming back, I might go the other way so I don't track mud into the house when I get home. We'll go this way. Oh, still ice on the lake. It hasn't reached that magic point where it's like all of a sudden the ice vanishes. It seems like a permanent fixture, no matter how warm it gets, but eventually, one of these days, it'll simply be water again. And yeah, it's definitely thin ice now. Oh, I wonder what these guys are doing. Looking at the dam. There's equipment on the bridge. Hello, Mariano in Mexico. Oh, we have beach. This is our beach. You wouldn't want to go swimming in there right now because you'd bounce off the surface. Till you get close to the dam, here it's liquid. And I don't know, a bunch of people, a bunch of guys in watching the water go over the spillway there. It's considerably higher flow than the last time I looked on the other side of the creek. So it's pouring out pretty good. Over here you can see how the ice ends, and so it's a very thin layer of ice out there now. I don't think it would bear your weight. Of course, the legislative building in front of us. I think a lot more people walking. I hate that. I actually prefer to be all by myself. Am I antisocial? A little bit. Maybe a little self-conscious about talking to myself as I walk along with my camera, but there's that too. Although these days everybody should be used to that. People talking to themselves with cell phones and such. Well, it's a veritable crowd right now. I figured it'd be crowded around lunchtime, but it's only 10 after 11, but perhaps they simply got an early start. And this is much later than it normally is that I come out. You can also see how high the water is. It's almost up to the edge there. So my guess is they're trying to get more going up through the spillway, but they have to watch that so they don't flood downstream. So spring flooding is always a possibility here as the snow melts, and there have been major floods in places some springs. So yeah, it's getting very close to the seawall, if you want to call it that. Way too many people. I don't like people. More coming, like the place is positively crowded. I'm actually going to go up this way though, towards the ledge. is why another reason I usually like to walk earlier in the mornings to as few people around as possible. In the winter, I have occasionally gone around without seeing anybody when it's 40 below. Funny that. Well, here's the gardens. Looks like they're already starting to prepare the beds. I think they've been cleaned up a bit since the last time I was here. There's Walter Scott, the first, not the Scottish poet, but the first premier of Saskatchewan. Well, it's a statue of him, it's not the actual person. It's +6. Celsius, of course. I presume Mexico uses Celsius. It's really only the States that's still doing Fahrenheit, I think. Oh, hello, goose. Not chasing you. Here's the statue of Queen Elizabeth. I was here for the unveiling when she was here, and standing right over there with my then 2-year-old daughter. 3? Was she 3 yet? Maybe she turned 3. In the rain. But Alice got to give her flowers, which was cool. I got a really good picture of the Queen from like 4 feet away, which is nice. There's front of the ledge. This is a bit of a shortcut when I come this way. I kind of cut off a little bit of the distance around the lake, but I like to come up through the gardens. And we'll go out here by the Trafalgar Fountain again, which I came by last week walking the other direction. So as you come along here, then you get those nice views of the legislative building there. The wind, I didn't put gloves on, and the wind is just cold enough. My hand's getting a little cold. I hope the sound is good. I haven't used the wireless mics for a long time. Had to work a little bit to get them to connect. I'd kind of forgotten how to do it. There's a shaded spot that the sun probably doesn't see until very late in the year. So you can see how much snow is still waiting to melt there. A little bit hiding down in this corner too. And over there. I'll be doing a lot of editing for the rest of the day on the submissions for Spring Magazine. I think will be my main focus. That's a magazine for emerging writers that I'm managing editor of. There's a squirrel. For this issue, there's different editors every issue. So I'm the managing and prose editor. There's also a poetry editor, Jillian Harding Russell. This is the aforementioned Trafalgar Fountain up here. Used to stand in Trafalgar Square in London. Came over here in 1939. Don't know for sure. I assume it was timed with the visit of King George and Queen Elizabeth. Queen Mum, we knew her as. Because they visited here pre-World War II, cementing ties with the Empire, I think. And we were still the Dominion of Canada then. We hadn't repatriated our Constitution and all that stuff. Not that I was around. 20 years before I was born. Which, when I was a kid, that would have seemed like a long time. Now, 20 years ago seems like... I remember that. That was yesterday, wasn't it? 20 years ago? Pretty much the same thing. Too many people walking around the lake. Come on, this is my lake. Quit walking around my lake. It's very bright with the sun shining on what's still ice. I came towards Spruce Island over there. If you haven't seen last night's walk, you might want to check it out just because it's cool in the evening. Everything looks more interesting and different. You can see into the buildings. All the nice houses looking warm. You could actually sit on that bench. It was up to its seat in snow not that long ago. There's another jogger. The wind blowing off the frozen lake is, of course, a little cooler than the actual air temperature. Coming up over here is the Holotamor Memorial, marking the last time the Russians were slaughtering Ukrainians. The genocide led by Stalin, forced famine. Back in the days of the Soviet Union, nothing has changed. There it is. It has all sorts of things wrapped around it right now for people cognizant of what's going on in Ukraine. The ice is still thick enough that the geese can walk on it, but I don't think I'd try it. Kind of a work building over there for park maintenance. I can hear something moving around. Front end loader of some sort. See a lot of the geese in pairs right now as they get ready to lay eggs. A whole lot of mating going on. Here, I'll walk around this little building just because I can. It's been covered with too much ice and snow. There's an outlet down here, which later in the winter or in the summer, there'll be water comes out here, which is dressed up a little bit. That's a part of the whole aeration of the... There you can see the geese are calmly walking on the thin ice. They're not worried. Of course, they can fly if it starts to sink under them. Comes a dog. I think that may be the first one I've seen around the lake this morning, which is unusual. How many people live in Regina? It's about 230,000. 225. Saskatoon's a bit bigger. It might be about 240, 245. And those are the only two cities of note of size. The next one is quite a ways down from there. Moose Jaw is 40,000 maybe, if that. And then you've got Swift Current, North Battleford, Yorkton, places like that, which are just a few thousand, 20, 30, I don't know exactly anymore. Weyburn, where I grew up, always said it was 10,000 people, but it wasn't really for years. They rounded up from about 7,000, and they finally officially got to 10,000 a few years ago. Whole province is 1.3 million, I think, which, you know, was only a few years ago it actually went over a million. 10 maybe, 15. It got close to a million back in the early 20th century, and then between the drought and the depression and all that sort of thing, it dropped to about half that and took a long time to build back up. So it's fairly sparsely populated, considering it's the size of Texas. Most people live in the southern third. The north is boreal forest. And the Shield territory, Canadian Shield, and I think the Shield gets into Saskatchewan up there. Anyway, mostly, yeah, I'm sure it does, mostly empty of people, although there's a lot of resource extraction, lumber, mining. Yeah, we were watching, what was it? I think it was the Grand Tour on Prime, the driving show, which we like a lot. Although unfortunately they've cut back to just a few specials now instead of their more regular. Hope we get some more of them. I really enjoy those. Anyway, they were driving dune buggies in the desert in Namibia, which looked absolutely empty of people, as deserts tend to. And they were talking about how sparsely populated Namibia was. You know, whatever it was, a small percentage of a person per square mile. So just for fun, I compared it and found out that Saskatchewan, on that basis, is actually more lightly populated than Namibia. So yes, there's a lot of empty space in northern Saskatchewan. Down here too, it's mostly farmland down here. We don't have a giant desert though. We have forests up north. We got rocks and trees, trees and rocks. Rocks and trees and trees and rocks and rocks and trees and trees and rocks and rocks and trees and trees and rocks and water. It's an arrogant worm song. In Canada, 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 Canada. And not a lot of lyrics. They're talking about Northern Ontario, which is Canadian Shield. And yeah, that's very difficult terrain. If you ever read The National Dream by Pierre Berton, well, there's more than one book, but it's actually a trilogy talking about the building of the Transcontinental Railway in Canada, which was a far harder proposition than the one in the States. And trying to get across Northern Ontario was brutal. And of course, the funny thing is, Northern Ontario is kind of due east from here because Ontario dips way down south. But the Canadian Shield dips down south as well over there. So north of the Great Lakes, basically. North of Lake Superior. It's called Northern Ontario. Anything north of that? I should come down and walk over on that side again before long. Last time I was down here, that still had snow and ice, and looks like it's pretty much cleared off. Now, how does it look down here? Yeah, I think I can go down here now. I've been avoiding it because of this, the water that's and ice down here, but it's cleared. Probably go take a turn around Pine Island, which I haven't done recently, so maybe I'll do that. Well, there's the Now, there's way more weight on one end of the phone when I have the wireless mic going, and that might be one reason why the horizon seems to be all over the place. It seems to tilt too far one direction and then too far the other. Okay, there, I turn it that way, it's sloped to the left. I brought it back this way, and it slopes to the right. Oh well. Maybe I'll just keep doing the wired one, but as I said, I paid money for these here wireless ones. They need workers everywhere right now. Yes, it's quite confused. Well, I got to come out earlier than this. I don't like all these people walking out here. We'll take a turn around the island here. I haven't been out there because they don't clear it during the winter, but it should be melted off now. There's always birds here. People do feed them sometimes, is one reason they tend to collect here. So we'll get a look at what's left of the ice. Unless if I hold it up with one hand, there's always lots of birds down here. Won't be long before they're swimming, but right now. This bridge is lined up so it points directly at the, I'll go this way, so it points directly at the legislative building. Artificial island, the whole lake is artificial, and so are the islands. It's Pine Island because they planted this one with pine trees. Spruce Island mostly has spruce on it, and Willow Island mostly has willow on it. Oh, there's still a bit of snow and ice lingering here in the sheltered bit. Be careful there. Be ashamed to fall down. And kind of the last chance to slip on the ice. So our house is sort of straight ahead of me, looking that way, where I started. Now later in the spring, this will be a waterfall, another aeration feature to keep oxygen in the water in the lake. Comes off that curvy bit up there. So it can be kind of wet along here, depending on what the wind's doing. There is open water out there, so parts of the lake are showing open water. There'll be another big patch down there, because there always is. I think there must be some kind of outflow that makes that. This is kind of a timing stand for when they do rowing competitions in the lake. It was built for the Canada Summer Games in 2005, which was held here right after the lake was deepened. Because they drained the whole thing that year. For months it was just a big depression. And they scraped it out, made it deeper, and then let the water back in. And they did a lot of this work around the shoreline at that time as well. Improved it. There was stuff around the shoreline, but they improved it. Okay, that was Pine Island. The only way on or off is by the bridge, because it's an island. They may be here to feed birds, I don't know. You know, I guess that's the downside of this. I wonder if there's some way to, I wonder if I clipped it to the top of the phone, if that would change the balance issues. I don't know, I'll have to try that next time. I think that if I clip to the top of the phone, you'll be able to see it, but only if I clip it over top of the camera lens, which I'm not going to do. That might balance it out better so that the gimbal keeps the horizon leveler more level. I should actually have my hand through the safety strap too. I didn't do it during the winter because it wouldn't fit through with the glove on. So I hope the sound is still good. It's still working. If it quits, it'll just switch to the mic on the phone, which is not as good. So I won't know until I get home and check it. This connects this art center over there. Here's a beach. You could go swimming in that. It's mostly liquid. It's all mostly goose poop too, but can't have everything. I went swimming in a slough once that was probably full of cow dung. It seemed like a good idea at the time because it was hot, but afterwards I felt kind of not very clean. It's a long time ago. I was young and stupider. We'll see what the walkway under, you can see how high the water is. That's higher than it has been. It's kind of up to where some of the bushes are growing there. See what it looks like under the bridge here. The walkway under the bridge is subject to flooding as the water rises. Certainly at full capacity, I'd say, the lake. You could tell that by the way it was right up almost to the top of the concrete walls. Over on the other side, where we will be again shortly, quite a bit of open water here because of the water flowing into the lake over here, because the creeks are not frozen. It's just the lake still has a cap of ice on it. Yeah, this is all blocked, so it must be flooded. Oh, it's very flooded. So, yes, not a path you're going to be taking for a while under the bridge here. I'm sure that's what all those guys were around the spillway. They must be, maybe they're opening it up more or something. Open it up too much and it starts flooding downstream. But the creek has dikes on either side of it, and it's generally, they manage it all right. But yeah, it's very high under the bridge there. So if you wanted to cross over, you'd have to cross over the Wascana Drive up there. And feeding the geese. I Don't know that they need it, but people do it. There's some things you're not supposed to feed them. I don't know what they've got here. It just looks like grain. Probably fine with that. That's what they eat out in the fields. Down by the marina now. Looks like the horizon has figured itself out for the moment, at least. Won't be launching any boats here for a bit yet. Still got some melting to go. Hi. So that's where you can launch boats. And there's places to tie them up here as well. See some boats on the lake. Not a lot, but even occasionally a sailboat. Rare though. More canoes and kayaks and that sort of thing. There's a rowing club. We'll walk right by there. Space up here in a minute. This is the marina. That's Bar Willow Eatery with the big deck and enclosed at the moment. They'll open that up, at least part of it, later, so it's not covered. There may be part of it covered for rainy days. A lot of this was developed for the Canada Summer Games too, so when we get around the corner, you'll see a sign to that effect. Right here, Canada Games, Wascana Lake Center. These washrooms are put in then. And this is the rowing club, Wascana Racing Canoe Club, wrccpaddle.com. No, it's still pretty muddy. So these will have boats in them. You can also, this is the Bob Ellard Boathouse. You can rent boats as well. There. This is the Wascana Racing Canoe Club again. And there's also just the, I thought there was just a rowing club, but I guess it's the same thing. They launch canoes here. Windsock to show you what the wind's doing. About a month ago, I walked around and it was minus 27. And then that weekend it warmed up and it's been springy ever since. It's often that way. You get a major change going into winter and going into spring where there's like a paradigm shift, I guess. This has been a nice slow melt, which I think is good for soil moisture, which is important in Saskatchewan. Well, I suspect the fields have long since melted and are probably starting to dry out, but we did get a touch of rain the other day, but nothing to write home about, as they say. I'll walk around the pond here because I've crossed the bridge more than I've done that. In fact, I might even go up the stairs over there just to be different today. I think I will. So this has a fountain in it later on for aeration purposes. Again, just enough ice here to be careful. And there's that bridge, which I often cross on the other side of it. The ledge beyond that. We'll go up the stairs today. So this is a scenic lookout. You can look directly across at the legislative building. There's that open water, which has been open even in the coldest part of winter. For a while it was open. So I think there must be some sort of outflow there to make that happen. And then downtown is down there. My house is over there where we're headed. And so we've kind of turned the corner now. Back down at the pond, where soon there will be a fountain. That's the Wascana Center in front of us. That's where the administrative offices and a few other things for the park are. Also have a kitchen and a kind of a general purpose room that you can rent for events. I've been in there for readings and book launches type of stuff. And there's I think it's called the Lady Slipper Garden behind it, which is a very nice enclosed garden, which I'll try to walk through it sometime this summer once it's blooming. Sad, way more people than you see in the dead of winter. I have parked over there and walked going the other direction. Might do that again.
And then Sunday, daughter
There we have the Queen building, which is actually a landlocked ship, HMCS Queen, for the naval cadets. If you want to join the Navy, I think you would go there. There's one in Saskatoon too. One in Saskatoon is HMCS Unicorn, I believe. So you can sort of see the Queen building because this is Regina, Queen City and all that. I'm not sure why there's a unicorn in Saskatoon, which is not particularly known for its unicorns. Nevertheless, that's what they call it. You can see it has the kind of the ship's mast there with the flag on it. Scenic view along here, especially in the summer. And we get to Willow Island coming up there. Yes, definitely the thin ice signs make sense. They stay there year round. So when the lake is completely liquid, they say thin ice. And when the ice is 4 feet thick, they say thin ice. There's the Queen building, HMCS Queen. In the Navy. Set your mind at ease. Navy, you can sail the 7 seas. I had 2 family members in the U.S. Navy. My brother didn't last long because of a medical discharge. That was back in the late 60s, maybe. But his son joined and was in for, basically a career term, 20 years or something like that. Had a lot of interesting experiences. Willow Island, only island you can go to and picnic on. apartments over there. I've walked over there before. There always seem to be a lot of rabbits over there, or snowshoe hares. Must be a warren almost. If hares do warrens, I know rabbits do. Hares might be more solitary, I'm not entirely sure. They look the same, but they're not actually the same animal. I should know. I read Watership Down. Everything I know about rabbits comes from Watership Down. A book I highly recommend. Dog and a baby. At least I presume that's what's in the stroller. Been up there not too long ago. I won't bother again. Hasn't changed much until the ice melts. And of course, as I always point out, this is kind of where the events in my young adult fantasy series, Shards of Excalibur, get underway. The Lady of the Lake shows up right there in the water. And a local girl and a slightly younger boy are called upon to find the Shards of Excalibur before Merlin can. The girl has special abilities as the heir to the power of the Lady of the Lake. And the boy seems to just be there by happenstance, but of course when it comes to magic, very little happens by happenstance. 5 books ensue. Many adventures all over the world. I recommend them. They have their own website at shardsofexcalibur.com, or you can go to shadowpawpress.com, or you can get them on Amazon. Right now you can only get them on Amazon. I was thinking of relaunching them on Amazon, and I still might do that, but at the same time they are part of my Shadow Paw Press ensemble, and that's not the Shadow Paw Press model, so that's why I haven't acted on that and the pressure of other deadlines. I should try it though. I might make more money, which, you know, would be a good thing. Excuse me. Is it dry enough to take the shortcut, I wonder? Probably not. Might be a little muddy down on the other end, so we'll stick to the pavement. Won't be long though. I can walk that way if I want to cut it off a bit. The college building over there, Dark Hall, is kind of hiding behind the trees. It's reopening. There's a reception on the 21st we're going to, and guided tours. And then that night there's a gala concert to officially reopen Dark Hall. Can't wait to see it. It's a great space, but it deteriorated badly over the years. It still had the original chairs in it from the 20s. Some were missing, some were broken, and they were all way too close together for modern audiences. I always have my knees jammed into my hip bones trying to sit in those chairs. So we've got new seats, new stage equipment, all that good stuff. New washrooms. It's now fully accessible, which it certainly wasn't before. There's a new lobby you go into instead of going up the front steps. Elevators, all that stuff. At one time it was the concert venue in Regina. Symphony performed there, Regina Music Club. I performed there many times. And my daughter, and my wife, and her mother, and her grandmother. Long tradition of music in both sides of my family, both my side and my wife's side. Yeah, water's quite high along the wall here. They must be doing something with the spillway. That crane wasn't there before on the bridge. Opening it up more, does that take a crane? It might, I don't know. I've never seen it done, but that might be what they're doing. And to let more water out of the lake. There's where they're building the new swimming pool to replace the old outdoor Wascana pool. Well, this is still an outdoor pool, but it's much nicer. It'll have water slides, new change rooms, and all that stuff. Don't think they'll have it ready at the beginning of the summer, but maybe by the end it'll open. There's a building there now. Not too far from home now. Be across Albert Street before you know it, and it's just a hop, skip, and a jump, as they say. This has been quite problematic the last 2 weeks, but it's dried off enough it's not anymore. It's the band shell gazebo. It's not really a band shell, but bands have played there. I've played there, I performed there. Went to somebody's wedding there too, outdoor wedding. Geese sitting on the ice. They don't care. Their feet clearly do not get cold. I wonder if they even have pain receptors in their feet. They have pain receptors, but no temperature receptors. I've seen a one-legged goose. They seem to manage all right with one leg. That was on a golf course where he probably got hit by a golf ball. Or at least he held one leg up, but he managed to get around on the other one. As they said in the golf shop, well, alive with one leg is better than not alive with two, I suppose. I'm soft-hearted. I don't want any animal to be hurt. Not a vegetarian. I'm perfectly happy to eat animals, but I don't want them to suffer. Would be a better way to say that, I guess. We'll go this way because I'm going to take the crosswalk to avoid all that mud down at this end of the underpass. I very rarely walk up this little piece of path, so this will take us through Speaker's Corner here, named after the one in Hyde Park in London, and actually has some light standards that or lamp posts, or lamps, I guess, not even posts. Not these, but these big ones up here actually were at one time in Hyde Park in London. I think there was a statue on there, and I don't know who it was of, but I think they took it down. Now it's just a concrete plinth, but I'm sure there was a statue on it. Oh, battery already. Huh. Maybe the plague of wokeness that is destroying everything in Western civilization. Tell us what you really think, Ed. I just did. I think this just changed, so it might be a bit of a wait. I think that's why it's piled up all the way down there, is because this light was on a minute ago. So whatever they're doing with that crane, they're right there. It's got to have something to do with the spillway. I thought that would be longer, maybe because we pressed it from two different directions, it changed quicker. Harrington Mews here is where Wally Knight, one of the two kids in the Shards of Excalibur series, lives. And an entirely fictional house on this very real piece of street. He lives in a house that doesn't really exist down at the end here, in place of one of those houses that actually does exist. I kept meaning to do a Shards of Excalibur tour. Maybe I will one of these days. As one of my walks, I could plan it out. I have to read my book again. The first one has quite a bit set in Regina. I know where, more or less, where Ariane lives. I know where they went to school. There's a 7-Eleven mentioned. That's a very real place. There's a coffee shop that's not a real place and isn't quite where the real one is, but it's kind of based on one that's there. Of course, the lake, it's a very real place. The library, she goes to the library, and the mall, I think, Cornwall Center. So I could get a pretty good lengthy walk just going to places that were featured in Shards of Excalibur, the first book, Song of the Sword. Oh, he's walking down the road. There's no ice this morning. Afternoon now. Is it afternoon? Post-afternoon. Just about 3 minutes to 12. So I was correct, it was still morning. But by the time I get to my front door, it'll be afternoon. Nice house of an older style. You can say that about a lot of these. Most of the houses here were built in the 20s, a few in the teens of the last century, not this one. Ours was built in 26, but there's one half a block away that was built in 1914, I think, or maybe even 1910, which I think is the oldest one in the neighborhood. And all of these would have then come along in that same sort of time frame, except for the new ones. Like this is a newer one for sure, and that's a very newer one next to it. Davin School ahead of us, also built in 1926. Same year as our house, by the same architect, in fact, designed by the same architect. Portnell. Francis Portnell, and he has a house that he designed for himself up here on Angus Crescent. Architects tend to build more than one house for themselves over their careers, I've noticed. So I don't know. If I looked in my book, it probably says how long he lived in this one. But it was one of his. Maybe he built it while he was building other houses in Davin School there. Which one is it? It's that one right there with the peaky roof. Was Portnell's own house right in front of us. I like it. It has a Bit of a European fairy tale house look to it, which of course appeals to me, with the brickwork and the interesting roof line and everything. This is a brand new one that somebody built recently. It's bigger, but it does at least fit into the neighborhood style nicely. Okay, well, that's basically it. I'll stop up here. So, thanks for walking with me. I'll be back tomorrow in some fashion, I think. Bye for now.